Hi. I chose a backdrop of graffiti for this chapter because my mother brought my children, Shay, and my sons, Kaylee and Fitzy, out to California, and she showed them everything. She took Shay all up and down the coast to all kind of exotic places, and she brought my sons, Kaylee and Fitzy, out here as well, and she asked them what they wanted to see, and the first thing they said was graffiti, so I thought that this background would be really appropriate. This chapter is really important to me because injustice against one often involves injustice against many. And so here we go with chapter 17, Grandparents' Rights. At the end of chapter 15, the one that includes the litigation from 2010, there is a quote. And the quote is, "Since 1999, Fred has paid child support but has been deprived the love and joy of his children due to actions of Stacy and her attorney, Lori A. Bernstein. He has been a fugitive due to a fraudulent alimony and child support order. His family, mother, sisters, and brothers, have been deprived of the opportunity of knowing and loving his children. The damages to Fred, his children, his mother, his sisters, and brother will never be repaired. The years taken away from these people by the cruel fraud cannot be replaced. However, by voiding the January 12, 1998 contempt order and voiding the March 9, 1999 default final judgment of divorce, as recommended herein, a healing can begin." That's the quote at the end of the litigation. I can't believe that my children wish to have severed contact with a grandmother, uncles, aunts, and cousins who love them. They, too, are victims of the unholy agreement between Stacy, her lawyer, the court, and the threat of what contact with the paternal side of their family would mean to them. The checks and balances of having two parents are supposed to prevent one parent from this kind of abuse upon their children. We're talking about the alienation here. By the court granting Stacy the ability to isolate me and my family, they have facilitated Stacy's worst nature. There are millions of grandparents in America who yearn for their grandchildren. There are millions of vindictive parents who punish a former spouse by stopping visitation. I cannot begin to describe the anguish felt by grandparents across America who have been brutalized by feminazi policies that have estranged them from their descendants and have broken them financially when they tried to fight in family court. This subject is huge in its scope, and any contact with support groups for this segment of the population would be a dramatic eye-opener for anyone who would give a damn. The government and the courts do not care, and the idea that these grandparents can be fleeced of their dear resources in their old age by merciless lawyers is so reprehensible that the term elder abuse is a glaring truth. The fact that my 7 children, not one has reached out to their grandmother for 16 years is solid proof that they are damaged. Which of these points is true? Stacy has made them so cold that they truly do not care. If that's true, it's tragic. Stacy has threatened them with excommunication from the family if they do make contact, to an extent that they truly believe that they never can do so. Stacy has vilified my family to the extent that my children hate the entire paternal side of their own family. The kids know the truth, but to protect their mother's need to never face her treachery, they hold the fort. Which one of those is true? I have in my possession a stack of thank you notes from Stacy to my mother that is literally 3 inches high, maybe more. The sentiments in these cards and letters are deeply touching, to say the very least. that Stacy could turn her back on my mother after 20 years of a loving relationship tells the story of a stone-cold bitch. I am truly sorry, and I know it may seem harsh to have written those words, but damn it, that's the truth. Stacy may characterize me, and this is the paragraph of the book that just... Stacy may characterize me any way she likes, but for her to stand between our children and my wonderful, loving mother is wrong on many levels. She should be ashamed, and my children should be ashamed as well. They all knew their grandmom. How could they be so cold for so many years? I guess they are truly Grays. That's what the Gray family does. I witnessed it for 2 decades. Now, I mentioned the big stack of letters and thank you notes from my children and from my ex-wife to my mother, their grandmother, and in Stacy's case, mother-in-law. And just to give you, here is that stack. Okay, when I said 3 inches, I was not kidding. And I know you'd like to see these, and I'm going to show them to you. Right along with my mother's disappointment in Stacy and my kids is that of my own brothers and sisters. Nikki, mother, happily married, college-educated child educator, retired millionaire from the shipping business, certified dive instructor. Vivian, former general manager of Chateau Ralph Rucci, the most expensive line of women's clothing in New York City. TV commercial producer for Mercedes-Benz, Snapple, and others, with her production company in California, and Nashville songwriter and producer and performer. Virginia, mother, international financial news correspondent for Bloomberg, Tokyo, London, Singapore, and San Francisco. Frank, father of 4, surgeon, anesthesiologist, owns his own medical business in Hawaii. Ellie, Juris Doctor from UC Berkeley, practicing legal mediation in San Francisco. These fine people would have taken my children around the world. While Virginia lived in London, she offered to have Siobhan spend the summer there with her and her cousin Ava. Stacy said no. I always wondered if Siobhan had ever been told. Had Siobhan been allowed to visit, Aunt Ginny would have taken her on a tour of the country that Siobhan would have never forgotten. They would have visited Ireland and Paris, France. They would have done every cultural event within reach. Ginny is an art lover of the highest order. She frequently enjoys symphony, opera, theater, jazz, ballet, pop, rock, museums, churches, and fine food. Siobhan would have also developed an intimate relationship with Ava, a fantastic, worldly child, a class president at her school who speaks fluent Mandarin Chinese. And that's just one example of one of my siblings and one of my children. I can't begin to tell you the possibilities with the others. After I left New Jersey, my brother Frank attempted to retain a relationship with Stacy and my children. He lived at the beach in Seabright, New Jersey. He worked at a hospital in Newark and thought he was under, and though he was under tremendous pressure as a new doctor, he found his way to my home to see my kids. Trying to keep the lines of communication open, he invited Stacy and the kids to his daughter Olivia's birthday party. Not only did Stacy not show up, she didn't even call. Olivia was devastated. My mother still tells me that she can remember Olivia sitting there in her party dress waiting for everybody, and where the heck were they? Frank could see the truth about Stacy. My sister Nikki didn't believe she couldn't intercede with communication and break the impasse. She decided to drop in at Stacy's house. Upon her arrival, my daughter Shay came out on the porch and threatened Nikki enough that she just got back in her car and left. Why? That Kaylee does not know his cousin Ryan is absurd. The family resemblance is too striking. Ryan is a graduate from the School of Engineering in Rochester and is a damn good engineer at that. Both my mother and I have asked Vivian and Ellie not to try to intercede. This was after one of the most disappointing phone calls I ever heard. We read an article written by Kaylee that we found on the internet. My mom couldn't resist. She decided to call Kaylee at his office. I listened in. He was terrified to hear her voice. He blurted out, "I can't talk to you. Goodbye." He didn't even say goodbye, Grandmom. We graciously said to each other, well, maybe he was busy, knowing that we were not being honest. But then, our grace was blown away by a phone call from Stacy. Kaylee had called her immediately to report the call from Grandmom. Just imagine the fear he must live with. Stacy was livid. She asked my mother who the hell she thought she was. She threatened her with a restraining order. My mom was not only sick over the way Stacy treated her, but was mortified to realize what kind of brainwashing the kids must have experienced. Stepping out of the book a moment, this phone call was 10 years after the divorce. Kaylee was a grown man. I can't believe how gutless and thoughtless my own kids are. Is there no part of me in them? I'm disgusted. A friend of mine in New Jersey who saw one in, of all places, Starbucks, said to me, "You know why Stacy kept having kids? She was trying to get one with balls." Well, that's the end of the chapter, and thank you for watching and listening. And what's being done to grandparents across this country is so reprehensible. I just don't understand how the politicians of the world can turn a blind eye to it, and the courts as well, and those judges. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks again.